Our next song has a story that goes with it. It is a story about how Raven, also known as Kokoini, gave music to the Dena'ina people a long time ago. A long time ago, Kokoini, the raven, was flying along, and he saw a river and a stream in a small village below him. He was curious if there was anything to eat down there, so he flew down, landed by the stream, looked around, and he saw large fish on the shore. Looked kind of good to Raven, to Kokoini, but he wondered what was for dinner in the village. So he went to the village, turned himself into a middle-aged man, walked into the village to look around and see what they were eating. He noticed there weren't any men in the village. There were maybe some young boys and some elderly men, but no men his age. It was just all women. The women were coming out to see who the stranger was. He asked them, "Where are the menfolk?" The women told him, "They're in the woods. They're hunting. You look hungry. Come eat with us." But when he said, "No, thank you. I don't eat with strangers." He was probably still thinking about that fish that he saw and how good it looked. So he said, "Instead, can I borrow a dip net? I like to go fishing." So they gave him a dip net, and he went back down by the stream where he was earlier, where he saw the fish. So he set the net down, took his eye out, and he set it on a large cottonwood log and said, "I'm going to go down here and eat this fish. Stay up here, watch if anybody comes. If you see anybody, I want you to yell, 'Yo-ho!'" So he took a piece of cloth, covered his empty eye socket, and he went down to the salmon. Peeled the skin back, and he started to eat. Back up at the log, the eye is sitting there. Eye is just sort of thinking, "I'm kind of bored right now." So decided to have some fun. The eye called out, "Yo-ho! Yo-ho!" Down at the fish. Kokoini heard this. So he ran back up to where the log was, and he looked around. He didn't see anybody. So he picked up his eye, spanked it, set it back down and said, "I told you, only yell yo-ho if somebody comes." So he went back down to the water, back down to the salmon, and he continued eating. Well, back up at the log, Eye is sitting there, and how many of you in here have ever gotten in trouble for something? Not that many, huh? How many of you have ever gotten in trouble and then done the same thing again because you knew you were going to get in trouble again? You knew you would, but you did it anyway. Well, Kokoini's eye was the same way. The eye was sitting there. It's like, "I'm bored again. Yo-ho! Yo-ho! Yo-ho!" So back down to the salmon, Kokoini heard this. He ran back up to the log and he looked around. Nobody. So spanks the eye again. Puts it down and says, "I told you, only yell yo-ho if somebody comes." He goes back down to the salmon, continues eating. So he's down there eating for a while. The eye's up at the log, and eventually the eye starts hearing footsteps. The men returning to the village. So the eye starts calling out, "Yo-ho! Yo-ho! Yo-ho! Yo-ho!" You think Kokoini believes him this time? Just ignores him and continues eating. The eye's yelling, "Yo-ho! Yo-ho! Yo-ho! Yo-ho!" Kokoini ignores him, enjoying his fish, but soon Kokoini also hears the footsteps. So he makes sure the cover is still there. He runs back up by the log, and he sees the men standing near the log. He's got to get him away from the eye, so he's trying to think, what should he do? The men see Kokoini run up, and they say, "What are you doing down here?" He points to the dip net and said, "Oh, I was down here fishing. Nothing in the water. There's just this big salmon on the beach. It looks like some kind of bird's been picking at it. So let's go somewhere else. Let's go downstream and see if there's fish down there." One of the men notices the patch and says, "Are you wounded? Here, let me see." Kokoini says, No. I'd rather take care of my own wounds. I just got sand in my eye. That's all. I'll take care of it." Another man looks at the log and he sees the eye and he says, "What's that?" "It looks like an eye." And he goes to grab it. Now, Kokoini doesn't want to lose his eye, so he says, "Don't touch it. Don't touch it. It's magical. You have to have powers to touch it. I have powers. It's looking out for us. It'll bring us good luck." And he picks it up And the words "chi'u shi'i chi'un," which means we have found something that'll bring us good luck, he doesn't say those words. Instead, he sings "chi'u shi'i chi'un, chi'u shi'i chi'un, chi'u shi'i chi'un." Throws it way up. I lands back in the socket, and Kokoini turns back into a bird and flies away, calls out, "Caw, caw, caw." Up to that point, the Dena'ina people had never heard music before. When Kokoini started singing, "Chi'u, shi'i, chi'un," that was the first song they'd ever heard. And so they were inspired by that. They started repeating that song and started making music of their own after hearing Kokoini sing that song. As for Kokoini himself, sometimes when he looks at you like that because he got his eye crooked. So now our dancers will perform the Raven Dance for you.